Welcome to Nisus Nation. I am your host, Jason. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It really helps us out, and it helps us to reach more listeners. Hey guys, welcome back to Nicest Nation. I am your host, Jason. And guys, we are in a very special location today, undisclosed location. We have a very special thing going on, but we can't reveal that just yet. So just be prepared because pretty soon you're going to find out some awesome stuff we've been doing here at Nicest. But today I have Kendall Stovall with us. And Kendall, tell us a little bit about you and what you do for Nicest.
So, for Nicest. So, I'm the industry specialist of the East. So, essentially, I think that was just a fancy way of saying I touch every industry that we do, all facets of the company, which I enjoy because it means I get to touch and do so many different things. But, most importantly is getting to work on things like this that we can't disclose right now. But the fact that Bora-Care and what it does for the building industry is just, I really enjoy that. And so I think that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah, definitely. So another fun fact, Kendall and I both started the same day at Nicest. So this is kind of a cool thing to sit down with him and just talk about his career and what things have been happening at Nicest since he started. So just tell us a little bit about, because I know you work with builders and stuff, just tell us a little bit about that and how things are going.
Going well. I think the biggest thing about builders and Bora-Care is really getting them educated. Once they see what the product does and what it stands for and how much we stand behind it, it's really easy for them to get behind it as well. But the biggest problem we've had is a lot of them just aren't educated on all the capabilities. Just like the project we were working on today, when the builder goes, well, I know it's a termites side, but what else? And when I started talking about any beetles. So wood, it's all wood destroying organisms, especially the brown rot decay fungus, which a lot of people don't really think about. So Bora-Care is also a fungicide. And then there's so much more to it, especially, when I talked to the builder, he was like, we were talking about the seal plates at the bottom. And I was explaining to him that the Bora-Care works as a sealant and meets that AWPA M4 standard for the end cuts, holes drilled, anything like that. And he was like, well, nobody ever cares about that. We don't pay any attention. So you're telling me we can do all of this in one? I'm like, yes, sir. We can do it all in one application. So it is. It's getting to play an education role, and it's fun to be there when you see the light bulb go off.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So aside from that, I guess you were asking to go back in time. So I actually used to work for a state home builders association. I was on staff, been in the building industry for many years throughout a few different professions. But ever since joining Nisus Nation, it's been interesting of what I've been able to do and the things that I could only have fathomed to do. You and I had the discussion the day we started. It was, we were sitting down. We were actually having lunch with Lee, and Lee goes, well, Kendall, what do you think about a podcast? I was like, well, that's exactly one of the things I was wanting to do at the HBA I worked for, and be able to show different sides of builders and building industry that people don't get to see. He's like, well, we're thinking about doing a podcast here. So what do you know? I was all in. So, it was funny that we finally come full circle, and you and I know we've tried multiple times and my schedule just hasn't allowed it, but I'm glad we're finally getting to do this.
Yeah, definitely. It's great. I love having the opportunity to do the podcast, and it's, the people I get to meet, and just, it's just amazing, especially in the whole industry. I mean, everyone is great. Everyone I've met, I haven't really met anyone that I've had, problems with so far. No. Like in some industries, you can meet somebody and you're like, oh, that guy is just kind of a jerk. But so far, I haven't really met anyone like that. And in the pest control industry, everyone seems to be pretty nice. And even if they're competitors, they're still cordial with each other.
Oh, very much. Yeah. It's nice to be somewhere where everybody works for the betterment of the industry. Mm-hmm. And if you would have told me years ago, which and I still technically, yes, I do work in pest control. Nisus is a quote-unquote pest control company, but I don't feel like that's exactly what I'm labeled as. I feel like I get to work with multiple different people from different professions all across everything Nicest touches. But yes, ultimately, it is all pest control when it comes down to it. And I would have never guessed in a million years that this is where we would be today having this conversation. But it's been a very fun and interesting ride. And, I definitely can't say thank you to my teammates at Nicest enough for everything we get to do and all the opportunities that each and every one of them afford us with all these different entities to do.
Definitely. I mean, it's been great for me. The opportunities I've had so far, just, being able to travel and do things like we did today is it's awesome and very, fulfilling, So.
It's, if you would have sat down with me when I was, I did several things on the legislative side, regulatory side with home builders. And had I known then what I know now about what this product does, I would have been a completely different person in some of those meetings than what I am now. And it just amazes me what I've gotten to learn since being here.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit? I mean, I know you talked a little bit about your background. Is there anything else that, like with the builders and stuff, like how you got started in like the building industry and, just some stuff like that, what about Kendall,
So I was kind of voluntold, if you will. I was working for a local independent insurance agency at the time, and they kind of came to me one day and said, "Hey, you're going to be our representative at the local HBA chapter. We want you to go to this meeting. By the way, it's this afternoon at this time at this restaurant. Go be there." And I walk in, completely didn't know anybody in the room. Kind of had to find my way through. Took me a couple meetings, stumbling around to kind of gain my traction. And the funny thing was outside of that, it just morphed into so much more. And the more I got involved, the more I got to know the builders, the easier it was for them to draw me into all the things that they could convince me to do, and really drew me out of a shell that I never realized I had myself in. So they then got me onto a board position. And after getting me onto a board position, I learned a very important lesson. You don't miss meetings. If you miss a meeting, they voted to change the bylaws to allow an associate member to become president. And by the way, they voted me in while I was gone on family vacation. So, note to self, don't plan family vacations on HBA meetings. You will get roped into doing something that you didn't want to do. So that's how I got my start into the HBA industry. So I was doing a lot of workers' comp insurance and things like that for builders, and that's just kind of where it all snowballed and started from. And it's morphed across a few different things, and luckily it has led me to where I am now because this team is phenomenal.
So is there anything about Bora-Care? I know we kind of touched base on it a little bit, but that you would just like to talk about?
As we sit here in one of the Formosan capitals of the United States, it's to be able to sit here and say Formosan and drywood and all these things that I had no clue what they were till I came here. I knew it was an issue. I didn't know there was a solve for it. With Formosans and drywoods being able to swarm through the air, and the fact that most treatments are only treating the soil or a little bit, but with Bora-Care, you're treating the wood. You can treat the whole house top to bottom. We've shown that. So really, it's the only true protection. Bora-Care treatment is the only true protection against Formosans and drywoods. You couple that with everything else it can do. Especially powder post beetles, because I run into that. I was in Minnesota the other day, and they're like, "Well, we don't care anything about termites, but we want to hear you talk about powder post beetles." So it doesn't matter what climate or what temperature zone you find yourself landing in. Somehow, some way, Bora-Care is a fix for something that they have going on. The Pacific Northwest, I talk to our people out there all the time, and out there, moisture is a big issue. So that's where the fungicide and the brown rot decay fungus comes in, which is, we all know, is a nasty thing, but with all that moisture, and again, what's the fix?
Yeah.
Bora-Care.
So now I've heard something somewhere that, like in HVAC units, like if you don't have a good moisture barrier or insulation around your ductwork, that actually the moisture, in a humid environment can actually affect your wood. Now, would Bora-Care prevent like fungi and stuff from growing in that element?
It will help deter it, but the biggest thing is, and so many of us nowadays have gotten used to the creature comforts of everything, us having things at our fingertips. Mm-hmm. So on a typical day, if you were to look at, let's just say, for instance, where we're at today, okay? If you were to look at the dew point, and let's say the dew point is 73 degrees, but you go over to the wall and you got your thermostat set at 68, well, then you're constantly pushing that thing below the dew point, and therefore you're making moisture in the house regardless of what you try to do. Yes, there are some other things to try to do to combat that, but ultimately, yes, a Bora-Care is the first step.
Okay, so it does, because I'm still learning about some of this stuff, because working in marketing, I don't get like more of the hands-on things, but I was just thinking, because my house, I know it can get very moist in there at times, but I didn't know moisture does create fungi, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
and it's not the M word. We're not going to throw the M word out there, because that's not what Bora-Care is made to attack. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, the other thing about Bora-Care is it's hydroscopic. Okay, it will literally, you can watch it chase moisture. There's a university not far from here that's getting ready to hopefully release a study later this year, and I've gotten a little preview of what that looks like, because they actually tested Bora-Care, and that's what was in the facilities that they're thing. And it's weird because they put these things on a crawl space. It was like a little small sample house. They put it on a crawl space, and they fully expected to watch the borate or the Bora-Care leach out the bottom. Was what they had they did all these soil tests. Well, what they found when they came back and did it was they actually found the Bora-Care further up. And the reason for that is there was moisture up there, and it was literally going to chase out the moisture.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So it will diffuse itself through wood to literally chase moisture.
I didn't know that. It's very interesting. Yeah. So where we're at is kind of the very deep south. Let's just say that, okay?
My neck of the woods. We can just throw that out there.
Yeah, so I know the Formosans is a big deal here. Can you go into a little bit about Formosans and what exactly they are and what they,
Yeah, so they are a subterranean termite. However, they do have the ability, they don't have to tunnel through mud tubes. They do get to, you'll see them in towns like what we're in hot months swarming through the air. But literally people have to close their windows to keep them from coming in their house. The funny thing is there's a town down south. There's a lady who works for the city. She has started an initiative called Gulf South Vector, and they are working on redoing the Formosan map because it is ever changing. It's funny. I give builder talks and they laugh at me, but everything I've said has started to come true over the past few months, and I think this lady's going to prove that. As bugs travel really slow in the ground.
Oh yeah,
but they travel 80 miles an hour up the interstate. So the more that mulch gets moved around from places in the south, we're starting to find Formosan termites in places that they would have never thought to have found them. And it's all because of, we could say, oh, it's global warming. No, it's because we as humans think we have to have everything right then, right there. We have to have what we want. We have to have this special thing from somewhere, down south up here. And, well, if you got to have it, you're going to take the good with the bad, right? Yeah. And, they're working now. They're getting samples from pest control operators all across the United States, anytime they get a termite, they're sending it in. Hey, is this? Is this? They're sending in everything they find. And these people are doing this study, and I'm really curious to see it, because she's already said at a meeting I was at a pest control event a month ago that the map was going to change. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And we're going to see that Formosan line inch further and further north. And drywood's not so much right now. But the Formosans, most definitely, they're spreading a little faster than most would like, more than I would like, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, if, say, I know with like natural disasters and stuff, sometimes places will run out of lumber and they'll have to source lumber from another area. So could stuff be already in that lumber coming from another area up to that?
It could be. But the good thing about lumber is a lot of it's kiln dried. And if it's kiln dried properly, granted, that is a problem we saw during COVID, was with supply chain shortage. We ran into an issue where stuff wasn't getting kiln dried properly. And it wasn't so much a termite issue as it was a fungus issue. There were being bunks of wood delivered to building sites covered in mold already.
Really? And
they were having to come out and have somebody professionally clean that wood. So that was only driving the cost up that much more on the construction of the house. But for the most part now, lumber being moved around is not as big of an issue because they do kiln dry most of it. Now that being said, powder post beetles, they can thrive on a moisture content at, anything above 14. The industry standard for kiln dried lumber is only 19%. But it's not even getting close to that.
Yeah.
So that's where your biggest issue is at. We've seen, there was an instance where some furniture from a well-known furniture company, the person had a chair, and it came down to the fact that chair was brought in from overseas, and it had termites already in the wood, and they got into the house and did some damage. But
oh man,
the best thing to do is just be careful with anything and everything, and Bora-Care is your best insurance.
Yeah, definitely. So this is a random question, and I just thought of it just because. So is there any furniture companies that use Bora-Care or could use Bora-Care to make their, just be safer for people with termites? I mean, that just, because you said that, and I was like, why can't furniture companies use Bora-Care?
They can. And it wouldn't necessarily be Bora-Care, but it could be Borate.
Yeah.
It's just like there's lumber manufacturers out there. It's like Hawaii now. I'm sure y'all had Sonya on to talk about it, but any lumber that goes into Hawaii now, because of the termite pressure and because of the humidity, has to be treated with a borate before it can enter. That's not us saying that. That's them saying that.
Yeah.
And there are some lumber companies, yes, that are getting on that bandwagon, and some have looked at it to say, we need to do this so that we can sell there. But then they're like, wait a minute, has this benefit too? Why don't we just put it in everything?
Yeah.
And, that's not necessarily going to be a Bora-Care. That's going to be one of our industrial lines that we can talk about in a different podcast. But you don't want to drag me down that rabbit hole, because I'll talk for 3 hours on that one.
Yeah, so that's very interesting because, I know, pressure treated wood is, treated for, for building and stuff like
moisture and ground contact. Yeah, it's mostly treated.
Why couldn't lumber industry do a Bora-Care pre-treat?
So a lot of it is that hydroscopic,
or one of our industrial products.
So a lot of it is, it's much better to do the Bora treatment once the house is in the dried in phase.
Gotcha.
That's why we do Bora-Care in the dried in phase like we do. What you're going to wind up with is, if you try to transport a whole truckload of stuff that's just completely covered in Bora-Care, a type of borate like that, it's going to chase that moisture, and every time it rains on it, it's going to bring it to the surface.
Leach it, yeah.
And you're going to get leaching. Yeah, absolutely. If it's not properly handled and properly done. And, you can't follow that piece of wood in every step
Yeah, that makes
of the
sense.
process and make sure that that's done. There are certain industries in which you can do that with, and people do that, and that's what borates are used great in.
Yeah.
But that's just one that is too much of a loose cannon.
Yeah, I get that. So you keep referring to dried in. For people out there who don't know, could you explain dried in?
Yeah, absolutely. So the dried in process of building a house is you got roof on, sides on. I mean, it can even be siding on or siding not on. So technically what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to spray the inside and the outside of the house. Okay, so that it gets good penetration. Or the alternative method is most of the times dried in, or when they put the sheeting up, they go put the house wrap on before they call their pest control operator in. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just do the inside twice in a 20-minute interval. So, or, they've got this product out there now that is a board that already has all your sheeting already on it. Tape the joints, great product. But that dried in phase is essentially you're keeping the inside of the house dry and out of the weather, just as it sounds, and that's our time to come in and do Bora-Care. So that's the other great thing about it is the pest control operator is not out there, playing in the soil or, in the cold weather in the wintertime. They're inside. Granted, it may still be cold, but if it's raining, they're inside a house. And weather doesn't dictate when it can be done. Yeah. That's the great thing about it. So I have a builder in Georgia. They do a lot of build-to-rent stuff, and literally they love all the aspects that Bora-Care give them, but their biggest deciding factor was the scheduling. So they didn't have to wait to, it's raining, we can't do a soil pre-treat today, or, we did the soil pre-treat yesterday, but now it's covered in raining and we can't pour concrete for a week, and da-da-da-da-da. They were running into that all the time, and they simply didn't want to just go by the wayside of those things, and they were having a hard time adapting. Well, in steps Bora-Care at that point in time, and they're like, we can do that. And the more they tried it, the more they got used to it. It's built into their schedule. The house we did today, you saw there were bathtubs already in there.
Yeah.
But we were spraying clear. No big deal. Well, that's the thing. So, each pest control operator is going to have to check their state requirements along with reading the Bora-Care label. But some states absolutely require a dye. Others say it's optional. So basically, what they're going to do is that it's a marking agent where they go in, where they spray the wall the 2 feet up or however far they do it. I love to see whole house treatments in heavy Formosan and drywood zones. There's several companies that is all they will do as a pest control person. They will only do a borate treatment as a whole house. They will not do it the 2-foot band and down. So what I'm talking about with the 2-foot band is, so IRC 318, which is your subterranean termite code, the International Residential Building Code, states that in this type of treatment, it has to be treated 2 feet up the wall, all your seal plates treated, any stress cracks in the cement slab or whatever it is, all the cement has to be treated. Let's say if it's crawl space, you're going up underneath there treating that. Bath traps treated properly, any plumbing penetrations treated, anything where they can get in, you're trying to treat. So that is all that's required to meet that code. Now, you can go above and beyond that, and what the way it states is that's a 1-to-1 ratio. It's 1 gallon of water to 1 gallon of Bora-Care. So when you do that, you're just as it sounds. You're mixing a gallon of water, gallon of Bora-Care in a jug with your impeller. We've got a whole video series on how to do that. Well, anything above that 2-foot line, you can go up to as much as a 5-to-1. So 5 gallons of water to 1 gallon of Bora-Care. So yes, there's some labor involved, but you're not necessarily increasing your cost a whole lot just because of the fact of you're not using as much chemical as you would think you would be using. Now, the house we treated today, we treated all the way up to the top plate at a 1-to-1. We're in a heavy, like I said, heavy Formosan zone. I would have loved to have done the whole house. We were just too late in the process on this one to get it in. It was too much of a task with trying to rig scaffolding and everything. It couldn't be done, but it is a very doable thing.
Yeah. So earlier you were talking about end cuts. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So AWPA, which is American Wood Protection Association, they have an M4 standard out there that says that all end cuts of pressure treated lumber. So when you're pressure treating lumber, all this stuff is getting on the outside surface layer. It's not like a borate that penetrates all the way to the middle. So when you make an end cut off, you're cutting off that protection layer on the outside. So, and it's actually in building code. Building code, it's IRC 318.1.2, goes into length to talk about end cuts, holes drilled. All of that has to be treated some way, some form. Very rarely does it happen. And the builder today, you heard him say, yeah, nobody hardly pays attention to that. But he's like, but you're telling me I can do that with it? Yes. So Bora-Care meets that standard.
So even if you're cutting the end off, because Bora-Care, the way it penetrates the wood, it'll still like cover
Correct.
Up to the end. Okay, got you. That's interesting. Yeah.
That's the thing too, is you're actually, with the way you're spraying, you're getting those ends right there on those. So the bottom seal plates in a house are pressure treated. Anything from it being lag bolted to the concrete if it's a slab foundation, to drilling plumbing through it, to drill, anything you drill through it, you're making an injury, so to speak, in that wood. Bora-Care is there to fill that void and make that layer of protection back over it.
That's awesome. Man, it was great sitting down and talking to you and just like catching up, especially after this long day of just, doing some awesome stuff that we can't talk about.
I'm glad we finally got it put together. It's a crying shame you had to, film in a hotel room, but that's when you have the opportunity to work for a company like Nicest that has as much going on, you do what you have to do.
Yeah.
You make the time when you have the time. And it just so happened we had the time, and I'm glad we finally got it in and got, sunburn and all. I'm glad we're here and got it done.
Yeah, it's been great, man, and I appreciate you doing this, and appreciate everyone watching. And we're Nisus Nation, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.